Howdy folks, it's Sean again with another story that, surprise, surprise, comes from the camp world. I first heard this story when I was probably 8 or 9 years old at the Wyndham Tolland 4-H camp in Abington, Connecticut. And they had a little place there called Inspiration Point, or Time for Thought, which was overlooked the lake and down to the main dining hall and all of that. And it was a beautiful spot. We'd go there after dinner every day, and both sides, the boys and the girls side of camp, would meet up there, and the staff would do a story or a song or a combination of those things. And even if you weren't paying attention to what was being said, you had a beautiful view that looked out over the lake. And often the game was who could spot the beaver swimming across the lake, but often we paid attention to what was being said, and that's where I first heard this story. And I've heard it in several different places, but it always sticks back for a childhood camp memory that was being told. But it's called the Warm Fuzzies. Story of the Warm Fuzzies. So once upon a time, there was this small village, tucked away, nestled into the forest near the mountains. And the name of that town was Swabby-Doo. And the people who lived there, of course, were the Swabby-Doo-Dahs. And in the town of Swabby-Doo, the custom there, when you were very young, you received a special bag. And in that bag, you carried your warm fuzzies. Now, the greetings in Swabby-Doo, whenever you met somebody, of course, you'd smile and you'd wave, and you'd often give a hug or an elbow bump, whatever the trend was at the time for the greeting, and you would exchange a warm fuzzy. You'd give each other a warm fuzzy, and it felt so good to get something from someone who you knew in the town. And even the new people in town, because people would move to Swabby-Doo, and there were many of towns like that in that same area that all had the same tradition. But whenever you moved there, they of course would welcome the new people with a greeting and a hug and a warm fuzzy. And this had gone on for generations. No one could remember a time, in fact, when people did not greet each other with a warm smile on a face and a warm fuzzy. Well, up above the town, in a small cave, there was a troll. Now, trolls are not generally known for their warm, cuddly dispositions. They tend to be a little bit more on the grumpy side. And they ponder, and they plot. And they're generally displeasant to be around. Well, this troll was tired of all the happiness that seemed to emanate from the town of Swabby-Doo. And so, it came up with a plan. And the troll, from time to time, because he enjoyed his peace and quiet up there, but from time to time he would wander down into the town and see what was going on. So one day, the troll had wandered into town and came upon one of the Swabby-Doo-Dahs as they were coming out of town. And of course, the Swabby-Doo-Dah had a big smile, reached down into their warm fuzzy bag and gave a warm fuzzy to the troll. And the troll took it and said, "I don't want to alarm you, but did you know that there's a shortage of warm fuzzies?" And the Swabby-Doo-Dah looked at the troll and said, "No, there's not. We've been giving out warm fuzzies forever." And the troll said, "I can only tell you what I know. There's a shortage coming, and you best keep a hold of your warm fuzzies." Swabby-Doo-Dah looked down into his bag and said, but every time I've given one, there's another one in here. I've never run out of Swabby-Doo-Dahs. I've never run out of warm fuzzies." Well, the troll snuck away with a sly smile on its face, knowing that deep down, the Swabby-Doo-Dah now had a concern. And sure enough, when that Swabby-Doo-Dah went home that evening, walked in, and their spouse was there, and normally they have a big greeting and a hug, and they exchange warm fuzzies, and they continue on with their day. But tonight, the Swabby-Doo-Dah that had met the troll gave a smile and a hug, but something was a little different. Now, its spouse had given them a warm fuzzy, but they stopped, and they explained to their spouse what had happened that day. That the troll had said that there was a shortage coming and we should be careful. Well, the two parents sat down that night after dinner and discussed what they should tell their children in the morning. Well, in the morning, the two got up for school and got ready to go, and they told them, don't take your warm fuzzy bags today. We can't give them out. There's a shortage of warm fuzzies coming. The little ones thought, no, you can't bring them. You just can't. And as you can imagine, they went to school that day, and as all their friends greeted them in warm smiles and warm fuzzies, and they didn't give any back, and they shared the story of the coming shortage of the warm fuzzies. It was indeed a dark day at school that day. And it didn't take long for that fear, that trepidation of the shortage of warm fuzzies to change the tradition. And pretty soon, the swabby-doo-dahs were slumped over. Smiles gone from their face. The glint from their eye was gone. The troll was very happy with what it had accomplished. No more laughs and smiles and festivities coming up from the town. But soon, many of the swabby-doo-dahs began to get sick, and some even died. Well, that news had reached the troll, and that was not the troll's intention. Now, the troll didn't have any warm fuzzies. He had one. But he did have a huge collection of cold pricklies, which cold pricklies were not nearly as much fun and fun to receive as a warm fuzzy. And in fact, they were cold and prickly and were really not much fun. And they kind of looked gnarly and scary and not much fun at all. But the troll thought, well, I can at least give these. And so he filled the bag of them up and went down into town and ran into a swabby-doo-dah and walked up and said, here, this is for you. The swabby-doo-dah kind of looked and took one, but it wasn't the same. And as much as the troll would try to help, cold pricklies really didn't have the same impact. Yeah, it was nice to get something, right? We hadn't gotten anything in a long time. There were no warm fuzzies to be handed out. There were just the cold pricklies. But then, one day, some youngsters from the nearby town had come over to play. They hadn't been over to Swabby-Doo in a long time, and they wanted to play with their Swabby-Doo-Dah friends. And they came over, and they, of course, were still exchanging warm fuzzies with no shortage in sight. And, of course, they came right up, and they saw their old friends, and they started waving and smiling and handing out warm fuzzies. And it felt so good to get them again and to feel that love and that joy and those smiles that the young Swabby-Doo-Dahs had shared what had gone. And the friends from the other town said, are you still, there's no shortage? Who told you that? They said, well, it was the troll up in the mountains. And they said, that troll. Don't listen to them. And in no time flat, with the children once again giving out the warm fuzzies, the tradition returned to the town. Often as it is, the children often show the adults the way to be. And this was no exception. And even the troll had come down one day and got a warm fuzzy, and he still had that one warm fuzzy, and the troll gave his warm fuzzy away and got one in return. And slowly the troll began to come down and be part of the Swabby-Doo town. And I guess I like this story, and it came back to my mind recently with all of the COVID-19 stuff, and just sometimes the angst in our society. Sometimes we need to look to the kids for how to do things right, because sometimes water rolls off their backs pretty quick. But I'm wondering right now, obviously we're not gonna, well, we might start walking around with warm fuzzy bags, but what can we do as a society to reach out and start with a warm fuzzy, start off with connection before we start to get to content? So maybe you carry a metaphorical warm fuzzy bag around and see what you can pass out to people, and you'll get some in return. You know, there's a great saying, you don't lose any light by lighting everyone else's candle. And I think it's the same with warm fuzzies. And the best part at camp was that we would then go make our own warm fuzzies, right? And you could pass them around at camp. And I remember this vividly. So my challenge to you is, what can you do to brighten someone's day and hand them a warm fuzzy and not a cold prickly? Cold pricklies are easy. Warm fuzzies take a little bit more courage and a little bit more daring and bravery. So maybe I'll see you on the trail, and we can share some warm fuzzies and have a great time. Have a wonderful evening. Take care of your loved ones and yourself, and maybe your neighbor. Take care. Bye.